Welcome to the Passionate Pioneer podcast. Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm passionate about supporting women who are feeling disillusioned and disappointed with their career and showing them what is possible when you follow your passion. Having your voice heard, finding your tribe of like minds, and being able to get support is so important when you don't know where to turn or who to talk to. I transformed my life from the corporate world to the coaching world, and I now empower women to follow my example and claim the freedom of choice to follow their heart, soul, and passion. So let's get started. Today, I am joined by Karen Nicholson. Karen was in the health profession throughout her working career up until she retired a few years ago. As a mental health specialist, she had found her passion in supporting parents and families to make better choices. She decided to retrain as an NLP, an MBIT coach, and founded Jars of Joy with her mum, Sparkly Margaret. Together, they empower individuals and groups to find joy in their life through workshops, speaking events, and coaching. Welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much, Beth. Thank you. That's a lovely welcome. Thank you.
Yes, even though I stumbled, never mind. Sparkly Margaret, I think it was the one that tripped me up. Your mum that you're in business with. But let's start, because your story is a little different, because you actually didn't. You took early retirement, didn't you? From the health profession, from your career, you took early retirement. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Why did you do that? And obviously then you've followed your passion. So tell us a little bit about the backstory.
So I'd been a health professional, health visitor for in excess of 36 years. And for the last few years, before I retired, I'd been unwell. So a couple of things really happened to me. I had some surgery, which was quite an awakening. I thought I might not recover from the surgery. And while I was off sick, I wasn't treated with the greatest of kindness by the management that were overseeing my sickness.
Right.
And so when I returned to work after quite a period of time, I kind of looked around and thought, is this what I really want? Do I want to work with people in a caring profession that don't particularly seem to care about people?
Right.
And so I would say that I made the decision one day. I was sat outside my workplace, and I got this churning feeling in my stomach, and I just thought, I can't go back in. I can't go in.
Right.
I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to tell my manager I'm retiring. And I was like, what have I done? And she was like, she could barely, I think she was quite excited that I was going to go, and she had to catch herself back to kind of like go, oh, good. And then she went, oh, really? But I think from that moment, I went through all of those moments of, have I done the right thing? Should I have done this? Should I just carry on with it as it is? Have I given it enough chance? And then I just thought, no, I'm going.
Right.
And yeah, I'm going. And it was like a massive weight had been lifted off me. It was like, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and now I'm in charge.
Right.
And I've got the power back. And so I finally retired. So I did that in December, and I retired on March the 1st, 2020.
Right. Oh, wow. The start of COVID.
Exactly that.
Great timing.
Great timing. Exactly that. Yeah. So I finished work on the 28th. Well, the 1st of March was like my first day of my retirement. And I think we went into lockdown 14 days later.
Right. So I bet you were happy to be out of the healthcare in that situation anyway, right? Because it was obviously a pandemic and
I kind of was and I kind of wasn't, because one of the things I've always been really passionate about is empowering people to make their own choices, supporting families, making that difference. And I kind of thought, how will that happen in the pandemic for them? You
right.
know, that happen? How will they get that support? So, but on the other side as well, my mum lives with me, Sparkly Margaret, and I was relieved that I was going to be able to spend that time with her, and we'd be in that kind of safety net of not having to go to work. So I wouldn't be constantly worried that I'd
Right.
be bringing home to her.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so it was a bit of I don't think if I'd have, hindsight's an amazing thing, isn't it? I look and think to
Yeah.
myself, wow, that one thing that I did that day, and here I am now.
Yeah, it's divine timing, isn't it? And I also think that's where you really understand how important it is to really listen and tune into your intuition and what it's telling you. And
Yeah,
obviously your intuition was screaming at you, you got to get out, right?
yeah,
But then
yeah,
your logic, the logic side, would be saying, oh, you're giving up a salary, you're giving up a job, and I've mentioned this in other chats with other ladies too, is that we like to be safe. So to take the early retirement and go, it's kind of, well, what do I do now? Because it was early retirement. You were still young,
yeah.
right?
And
Relatively young.
many people that I worked with kind of went, how can you afford to do that? And I said, how can I afford not to?
Right.
How can I afford not to? I was kind of like, well, I don't, I will get a pension, not massive, but leaving, staying wasn't an option for
Right.
me.
Yeah, because it was taking a toll on your health, on your
Yeah,
mental health, right? And you're
yeah.
in that's what you do. You're a mental health awareness specialist, and that's what
Well,
you support other people with, right? Mental
so
mental health.
my background was I trained in mental health over 35 years ago, and then became a health visitor. So I was really with families, mums that had had babies, and really, that was always at the forefront of my mind. We can't really treat people just as a body or as a brain separately.
Right.
We've really got to be able to take that whole person. And as a health visitor, that helped me to do that, because mental health, obviously people were having babies and everybody was talking about, was the baby feeding? Was the baby, growing and developing? And my curiosity was always added to that, was, how does a mum feel about this?
Right. Of course.
How does the
Yes,
mum feel?
because years ago that was, we thought about the baby. We didn't really think about the mom, right? The mom's,
Yeah,
and then we came to realize that, moms can go into sort of depression after a baby, and,
yeah,
they have a lot of pressure on them. And all of we're aware of all of that now, whereas years ago we weren't. So that's a really nice thing that, that you learned to do, is nurture, you know.
absolutely. And, very much my philosophy visitor, happy mums make happy babies.
Right.
So always looking for that mum, and that, making sure, really, when I look back now, I suppose I've always been trying to help parents find the joys in being the parent.
Right. Yeah.
Because some days life parenting isn't very joyful.
Right.
And so trying to give them support networks and tools and empowerment, just in everyday life. So I guess when I look now, what I'm now doing isn't so dissimilar, but I'm not tied to the constraints of an organization telling me what to do and when to do it.
Right. Yes, you've got your freedom to make the choices yourself and do it, but you've continued it and you've taken it to the next level, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, yeah. So I guess if you kind of were to look at the other little part of the backstory about how I've ended up where I am now, we were probably about 6 weeks into lockdown. And when the novelty, I suppose, had worn off, that, we had beautiful sunny days, and I wasn't at work, and the freedom of not being at work. And but the other side of that was that my family, my son and his wife and two children, they live in China. And so I'd been in the knowledge and worry of lockdown since much earlier than we had in the UK. And probably about 6 to 8 weeks into lockdown, I was really missing my family. And I know that a lot of other people were too. But there were like restrictions. People could see the family, they could meet them at the gate, and it was awful. But I had absolutely no chance and no hope of doing that because they were 6,500 miles away.
Yeah.
But as I know, and I know you are a firm believer in this, the universe well and truly has your back on such days. And I went into my garage to do something completely different. I think I went in to find, actually, I'd found a bread maker. I went in to look for a bread maker that I determined that I'd got. But actually what I found were 2 jars from my son's wedding from 2014. And I found those jars and they made me smile for the first time in weeks.
Nice.
Because I looked at them and immediately I was transported back to the day, the memory, the joy, the happiness, and what a beautiful time we'd had. And I don't think I really recognized what the significance of them would be, but I just knew that I kind of looked at them and thought, well, if a jar with a beautiful memory can make me smile, what would a jar beautifully decorated, filled with beautiful memories, what would that do to help me to step into joy? Because I really wasn't feeling much joy.
Right.
And what I then realized as I became an NLP practitioner was that really what I was looking at there, very cleverly, although I didn't really realize, was the capacity to change my own state.
Yeah.
And to be able to not feel something initially, but actually behave in a way that led to a change in my feelings and a change in my thoughts. And so really, it was quite a powerful, powerful moment finding those. And I'm forever grateful really to the universe.
Right.
Because, that was quite a, impactful moment. And I didn't really know at the time the significance, but yeah. And here we are today.
Yeah. And you mentioned 2 things there. You mentioned, obviously that's the start of Jars of Joy.
Yeah.
Which is your company. And then also you talked about the NLP. And so I know that you trained as an NLP and MBIT coach. Yep. So how did all of these things sort of combine? Obviously, did Jars of Joy come first? And then you followed the breadcrumbs and you decided to retrain? How did it happen, Karen? Tell us.
There were a series of events, to be fair. I think so I found the jars about 6 weeks in, so that would be probably April. And I actually listened to a free coaching week that a coach put on, a beautiful coach who came into my life. And then something else came through on Facebook and I looked and thought, I might have a little go at doing that NLP. This all sounds really familiar to me, but I might have a little, I might go and do the course. I mean, we were all looking for things to keep us occupied during lockdown. There were only so many times you could clear out your cupboards.
Yeah.
And sit in your garden with a cup of tea. I think I really needed something to throw my energies into that was positive. So that kind of, it all kind of accumulated together. So I was in some coaching containers with a coach, and just they all just seemed to pop up in good timing. I became an NLP practitioner and I trained as a coach. And then the MBIT coaching came probably about 18 months ago. And that was like the last little piece of my jigsaw, because it was so much about your head brain, your heart brain, and your gut brain all working together. But I started my nursing career on a heart ward.
Right.
30 something years ago. That would have been my very first experience, I guess, of what happens when you maybe don't listen to your heart.
Right.
And you become stressed, and it has a physical manifestation of making you quite unwell.
Right. Yes, but people don't realize the amount of we think we're coping with stress, don't we? We think we're coping with stress. We think everything's all right. We're just going through the motions, and then boom, something happens. And, you know, your body shuts down in one way or another, or there's something happen. It starts to cry out to you. And it's a warning sign, isn't it? Just to say, slow down, take care of yourself. I mean, the conversations I've been having, excuse me, self-awareness and self-care are the two things that really we need to be taking more care of as women. We tend to put ourselves last.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. And it's really interesting when you said that as well, because when I trained to be a health visitor back in 1992, that's a long time ago now, isn't it?
Back in
1990 something or other. Yeah. When the Hitman and Her was still on, and all those amazing programs, and little like, gotta get that out of your head now. Michaela Strachan will be at the forefront.
That's right.
And back in those days, I had to do we did a piece of work. The four of us that were training did a piece of work, and our complete piece of work that we did was all about why women work, the discrimination women face in the workplace, women as carers, and those kind of things are still relevant today.
Absolutely they are.
My piece of work that I did was all based, and some people don't particularly, I suppose, see him the same as I, but it was all around Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and those very basic needs. But the stuff that we uncovered while we were doing that piece of work, I'd say that much of that still exists today in many places. Women go to the doctors on behalf of the family.
Right.
And that's probably still the case.
Yeah, absolutely.
My daughter's not well, my sister's not well, somebody else isn't well, but they never go and put themselves first and say, I'm not well. Yeah. I need help me. And I hope it's starting to change, because we're having a lot more now, aren't we, of, about speak up about the menopause, speak up about women's issues. And I just think, this is that it's just so important that we really focus on what we need, because we are the oxygen for our families often.
Yeah. So tell me, how does it feel now then to be, following your passion on your own terms? And obviously it's all unfolded nicely, hasn't it? The universe has answered. You took action. When you take action, the universe answers. And so you started taking the action, and slowly it's all sort of fallen into place. So how would you feel now? What would you say?
Interesting, Beth. I was thinking about that earlier on today, and about, what is it? So I applied. So I'm, I suppose, very different in that I'm a community interest company, so a non-for-profit business. And I actually got rejected twice when I applied for the company. So I was thinking about that, and I thought to myself, it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be. Well, I didn't ever think it would be easy. But it's all happened in good time, exactly as you've said, because those two times that it didn't just happen, like the first time I applied, I thought, oh yeah, of course they'll want me to be a community interest company. Look at all this stuff I'm doing. And it got knocked back. And I was like, oh, right. Oh, well, what else do I need to do?
Right. So then what else do I need to do? What else do I need to look at? Something's missing. Let's try again.
So then I tried again a month later and it got knocked back again. And then I thought, okay, so who do I need to speak to? Who do I need to speak to find out, what is it that they really, really want for me to become this community interest company? What language do I need to change? Do I need to speak in a different way? Do I need to make it a more corporate language? How do I take that back from being, to get it to be a company? And actually, what I needed to do was just to be more authentic and open about the fact that I ran this business with my almost 90-year-old mother. We brought joy to people. We were actually wanting to make a difference in the world. And whilst doing that, we could really help people find joy in their life and have positive health and well-being.
Yeah, I was going to say when you were saying the what sort of what language do I need to use? Do I need to use more corporate? Do I need to? But if it doesn't feel right, you know, that to me it automatically sounded, not incorrect. And yes, and I was going to say, your authenticity,
absolutely,
because that's what people want to see. They want to see your authentic self.
And I think that's
your story. This is why I'm doing this podcast, because women are interested in stories that resonate with them, and they understand it's me being authentic and it's you being authentic.
And that can be that takes a lot of courage. So I would say, I was sat thinking to myself, so I know when you said originally about sort of looking at if there's somebody sat there out there now and they're in a job or a career and they're thinking, and in fact, somebody wrote something on Facebook the other day and said, I've worked in corporate 16 years and I'd really like to start a business, but I have no idea what my skill set is.
Yeah.
And I was reflecting about where I am now to think to myself, what are the skills I brought with me?
Right.
What are the things that not getting to be where I wanted to be for the first time, what did that uncover about me? What did it show me about me that I maybe had forgotten I even had inside of me?
Yeah, exactly. So what I talk about, Karen, is that's what I do in the passion programs, is that, you can't, it's very scary for women to leave a stable job that they've been in for years, a corporate job to follow their passion. Sometimes they don't know what it is. And you can't just go from A to Z. It's not that. You've got to just take the first step. For me, I took the first step out of corporate as a side step, and I retrained as an English language teacher. Now I'm an entrepreneur, language teacher and coach. So, it was the first step for me. It was the first logical thing I could do. What was I good at? I was good at teaching. I loved to see people succeed. I wanted to help them. So what could I do? And I love the English language. So that was my first step. So that was it was a step out of corporate so that I was still earning money. I could still pay bills and I could still do what I wanted to do. And that's the first thing that I think that we need to. It was different for you. I mean, you did retire. You had, obviously you've got support and you followed a slightly different route. But when you've got to give up something, that's, well, I don't know, because you did give up something, didn't you? But you
really give up a lot, because remains is that where I was, from the point of view of expertise and clinical skills and what I'd got, I left that, and it was like, right, okay, so you've got a particular job role. So I was a health visitor. What else is there that incorporates all of those skill set without just health visitor in another town or another for organization. So I really had to kind of finely tune what were those things that I'd used within there. I mean, I'd done so much. I don't honestly think sometimes people really knew what we really did as health visitors and just how much, we really had to draw down on our own resources with every single client that we met.
Right.
And just what a skill set would be involved in an interaction. I mean,
right.
Well, how our days, you could go in with a diary full of stuff and you had to change it all in 90 seconds because a phone call came in and your day changed. So to then sit and really, like you were saying, to be able to sit and think, okay, what is the skill set that I bring? So actually, I realized I'm really flexible. I'm really tenacious because I give up, and I'm really resourceful. Because when it doesn't happen one way, I find another way and I find another way because I'd so got the passion, and I've been lucky to be coached by some amazing humans through this time. Matt Callanan coached me for a while. And last month we had a conversation and he brought out a piece of paper from when he coached me about 2.5 years ago. And he said on this piece of paper, it said on the front page, Jars of Joy will become a charity or a non-for-profit organisation. I've just got to jump through a few hoops.
So you made it, so it's like you've made that real, you've manifested that.
So and I was like, wow, nice.
Fantastic.
And to just kind of think, but it's been the journey. I think that possibly it's been the road less travelled, because sometimes you go into maybe becoming a coach, and I do coach women and I do coach one-to-one, but Jars of Joy I knew would have a massive impact if I could get it to enough people.
Right.
And that more people, I was on this mission to have 1 million Jars of Joy.
Yeah, the million, that's right. It's on your site, isn't it? You want a million jars of joy, which I think is amazing.
And what I realized was that, I have a conscious community of joy, and I've been really consistent. I've been really persistent. I've posted, I've got followers and people. But what I've really done, Beth, is I've made real connections with people.
Yes.
Real human connections. And, that's how we've met.
Yeah, we have. We've known each other for a few years now.
And those, and I think as well, to get the people that are around you as well, when you're saying about that scary place of leaving somewhere, it's surprising once you are authentically you, how the people that are meant to be on that journey with you appear.
Well, that's what I was going to finish when I was saying earlier about, taking the step and taking the side step. It is scary, but just follow the breadcrumbs, and how many women have we both spoken to, Karen, over the years? And, if you do follow the breadcrumbs, you just take the next available step and the next available step and the next step. It sort of unfolds. It's an ever evolving story. But you have to first take the step out of that corporate job, that controlling, manipulating job, with bullies, with the male dominance, being undervalued, overlooked, having health problems because you're working like a bloody dog most of the time, and it's about having the courage to take that one step forward and one step out and another step forward. And that's the time when you really need your tribe. You need mentors, you need coaches, you need people on your side, friends.
And that's really interesting, because you'd asked about you'd mentioned, and I've actually written exactly that right down here. I've actually written exactly that. I'd made a little note, came on, and I just thought, those are exactly that. And the people that sometimes are the people that you least expect, that and I think that's the one thing I would say is be prepared to be surprised. Who who, when you speak who you really are, people message you and say thank you for that, or I really loved what you said, and and I was like, oh right, okay, oh, and think, to be who you are, exactly like you said at the beginning, that freedom, now I've become a community interest company. The doors are starting to open for me.
Right.
Two organizations are approaching me because they've seen me authentically for almost 3 years being the person who I actually am, without, I haven't had to be somebody different. And in fact, I remember one morning waking up and thinking, who would have thought I could run a business by just being me? And I just thought,
Yeah.
who would think that? Because when you work in organizations, you are jumping through hoops. You are going in and conforming to somebody else's idea. And often
someone else's story, Karen.
Often you are working. And what I realized is as well is, and I've spoken to a few people, is that I worked in an organization, and I think, it's very topical at the moment, certainly in the UK. I worked in an organization where my worth and the skills and the expertise and the knowledge I brought weren't valued. So to the point where I didn't value them myself.
Right. Yeah. Someone else's story that you just start believing over time. Someone else's story, you just start believing. So you're not good enough. Who do you think you are?
Yeah. And so, to work in an organization where you don't feel valued, you don't feel listened to, and yet, in here, and I knew in my heart that I was making a difference to families. And the day I retired, well, actually, I couldn't read them on the day I retired. I read them quite a while later, but I had something in the region of 300 to 400 messages on Facebook from families, from mums, from people saying to me, thank you for what you did in our life and for what you did with us and for being our health visitor. And I was overwhelmed really, because at the time I wasn't really, I've always listened to people. I've always spent time with people. I've kind of tried to fit in what the organization wanted, but I've tried to meet the needs of the person and make them where they're at.
Right.
And that was probably at the detriment to myself. So, probably making myself burn out.
Right.
Because I still did the other stuff I needed to do too. But I always wanted to make sure that those families had the best service that they needed.
Yeah, that's amazing that you had so many messages. So you knew that you were doing something right. It's just all the other hoops that you have to jump through.
Exactly. And it's gorgeous really to be able to do it myself now. And it's really gorgeous that I can do this with my mum. She's almost 90. And I really wanted her to be part of this. And I think that's why I've been on such this mission, because sometimes we forget the value that older people bring to our world, and the wisdom that they have and the life they've lived. And, and I really value her presence within within Jars of Joy. She is, my absolute partner in crime.
That's lovely though. Isn't that really nice that you've managed? And I love the fact that you call her Sparkly Margaret, and I've never met your mom, so I don't I don't think I've ever heard her speak actually, but I see lots of pictures of her with you. But
well, when we go live, she sings and speaks, and when we go live in our Facebook group, and she always wears sparkly earrings. And today she was completely sparkly. She had a sparkly headband and sparkly earrings on a jumper. And she said to me, "Is this too much?" I said, "For you, Margaret, it's never too much." Never too much. Because I think one of the other things is as well, Beth, is that, often we make ourselves small to fit in with other people. And really big thing about this is, be who you are, and shine bright, because your story, my story, someone else's story, if somebody else hears that, it might be just what they need to hear.
Absolutely, pearls of wisdom. And that's why it's one of the big reasons why I've started this podcast, Karen, because I know that there are women out there, they're lining up. They're literally signing up every day. March is full, April's filling up. I'm now taking bookings for May. Women are lining up to tell their story because they want to have a voice. They want to inspire, and they want to encourage and empower other women to follow their passion, and to get out of that 9 to 5, undervalued, undermined, overworked, disillusioned, frustrated, daily grind, really. And there is hope on the other side. Look, it is possible, and this is what's possible on the other side. So that's why it's really important to tell these stories.
And when I wrote my chapter in the book Step Aside and Rise, my very last sentence was exactly that. So a very beautiful woman who I've always admired, Audrey Hepburn.
Oh, I love Audrey Hepburn.
So she says, impossible really means I'm possible.
That's on my website.
That's
on my website. It's one of my mottos. It's on my vision board. Yeah, that was impossible. It is not true. It just it literally says I'm possible.
Absolutely. And one of the things as well when I trained to do NLP, the neuro linguistic programming, is that one of the things is, if it's possible in the world, it's possible for me, and it's possible for you, and it's possible for anyone, because we can model other people's behavior. We can model it. If someone else is doing it, so can we.
Absolutely. That's what I say. If somebody else is out there doing it, then there's space for you to do it too, because you're going to do it probably in your unique way. Most likely you might get the same results, but you'll get there in a different way. It's your uniqueness and your own story. It's like writing your own chapters, your own book chapter by chapter, and take it chapter by chapter. You don't have to write the whole bloody book in a day. It can't be done, right? You take it chapter by chapter, and one step at a time.
I'm a real firm believer in that. This chapter is done, and maybe I'll move on to the next one. So, I look now and think to myself, I've had a pretty long it's been 3 years since I retired, literally last week. And I suppose one of the things is a really positive note, in that next week I travel to China to visit with my son and his wife and their 2 children. And I'll be seeing them for the first time in 3.5 years.
Yeah, that's lovely.
I think what it's shown me is that, in that time of wanting to get where I want to get to, because they are my everything, in that time, I've been really productive, and I've discovered a passion that was about me and what I really wanted and what I really needed. But actually, that was a passion that a lot of people needed and the world needed.
Right.
And, we all need joy in our life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We all need joy. And sometimes we just forget that actually it's available inside of us. We've just got to remember, or find somebody who can help us tap there and release that spirit that says, here I am, here's joy.
Right. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. And I'm sure that your children are really proud of you, Karen. I'm pretty sure they are. I'm sure. Have they told you they're proud of you? Not that you need to hear it, but I'm sure they are.
I'm interested. We'll wait and see.
Okay. So let me just ask you a final question here, just to wrap up. Do you have any advice, final words of wisdom to women that are listening today about why they should follow their passion, which eventually leads to their purpose?
Well, I think really, in looking at wanting to follow something, because exactly what we said before, to do something that lights you up. If you find something that you love, you'll never work a day again.
Another entrepreneur told me that.
Because every day when you do that, you will, find what you love, and you'll love it, and you'll never feel like you're turning up for work. You'll come along every day and it will be what you want to do. And so find what you love, and really look at what you love, and what you decide in that first step, like you said, Beth. What you start off with may not be where you end up, but that's the adventure.
That's the adventure, isn't it? That's part of the journey, the ever-evolving story.
It's
right?
the absolute adventure of, of looking over here and looking at, and you get to choose because you are in charge.
Wonderful. That's amazing. What a great way to end this chat today, Karen.
Oh,
Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Karen. Thanks for listening today. If you would like to join me in telling your story about how you are quietly quitting your career and how you've got one foot out of the 9-to-5 rat race, or if you are a woman who has a story about already leaving the professional world to follow your passion and can offer inspiring advice, then please message me to get yourself booked in on an episode just for you. If you have a question for me or would like to know more information about how I can support you in one of my passion programs, please message me on Instagram, Facebook, or visit my website. You can also grab your free copy of my workbook, Your Passion Journey Starts Here, by joining my online community. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy this podcast and share it with your friends. Until next time, this is Beth Taylor at the Passionate Pioneer Podcast, signing off.